Congratulations, welcome, namaste, and good day to dear all honorable, respected delegates, researchers, and dear audience. Here we are again on second day on this international virtual workshop uh, on research skills organized by International Research Academy of Science and Art, IRESA, Belgrade, Serbia, and IRESA branch, India, Cape Comorin Trust, India, and Lavender Literary Club, India. Today, I take great pleasure in welcoming our first speaker, Honorable Professor Dr. Spresa Delija, ma'am, to present her speech. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah. Um, Hello.
Hello.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Everywhere where you are. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very important workshop, which is about research writing. And as a professor at the Tirana University in Albania, I would highly recommend these the findings of this workshop to everyone. Actually, I do teach there for to at the Tirana University for so many times and for so many years, and also I prepare students or I tutor students how to write their own thesis and research work. But I mentor PhD students, and it is very important for everyone to get to know how to write their own thesis and how to include their ideas into a research way. So my talk today, before starting with the presentation, I would like to thank the organizers of this workshop, and especially Dr. Shaila Vasudeva, who invited me to be one of the speakers here at this very important, inspiring, and motivating workshop for everyone, not only for us researchers and professors and scholars, but also how to lead the young researchers into research work and into research field. And my talk today is about how to avoid plagiarism in writing your thesis. So first, I'm going to talk. I cannot share because I tried before to share my PowerPoint, but okay, so I can continue. So first I'll talk about what is plagiarism. Who every one of us knows it very well because we all are professors, educators, but also researchers. And if we refer to any kind of dictionary, British and um, American dictionaries, plagiarism is to steal and pass off the ideas and words of another as one's own. That makes your speech, that makes your writing plagiarized. So I mean, we use, or the person who writes his piece, his research, or his article, or his work, and uses another's words as if they are theirs. This is very, I mean, it's not ethical, but also it's very bad. And
Professor,
also,
sorry to interrupt you, Professor.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't introduce you properly. May I finish your introduction? give a short introduction for you first before you continue. Do you mind? Do you mind? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so,
Yeah?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. 1 minute. I make it very fast.
Okay,
Dear
thank you.
audience,
Thank you.
yeah, dear Professor Doctors, Shipresa Delija is Professor of English in Faculty of Foreign Language, uh, Tirana University, Albania. Professor
Yeah,
Doctor is born and educated in Albania, is a professor of English in Faculty of Foreign Languages at Tirana University, Albania. Professor Dr. Sipresa Delija has a record of successful teaching and teacher training in Albania, Kosovo, and Macedonia. She has contributed in the Albanian reform of in education in Albania and has been teaching for about 46 years.
yeah,
Professor Dr. Delija has been very active in pre-service and in service student teachers trainings. She has been the president of ELTA Albania, which is an English Language Association, for 8 years and has organized more than 32 conferences in the country where around 5,000 teachers have been participated to exchange teaching experiences with one another. In 2014, ELTA Albania got the first prize from House of London among 157 associations in the world. Professor Dr. Delija has been a member of IATEFL UK and TESOL International since 1994. She has been a member of steering committee at the Professional Development Division at TESOL International for 6 years. She is one of the founders of ESU, English Speaking Union in Albania, hence be in the jury of public speaking competition organized by ESU every year. Working with professionals worldwide has made her embrace the best teaching methods and apply them in Albanian classes. We can go on and on. Actually, she is a very prominent figure in this area. Therefore, I think I better stop due to time constraint for her to present her speech. Thank you. Please welcome Professor Dr. Delija again. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption.
thank you so much, Esther, and I highly appreciate that. So, just going back to the presentation. So if I refer to dictionary.com, plagiarism occurs when a writer duplicates another writer's language or ideas and then calls the work his or her own. And another reference that I've taken or considered is from Cambridge Dictionary, which prescribes plagiarism as the process or practice of using another person's ideas or work and pretending that it is your own. So, I mean, if we refer to other dictionaries as well, they consider it as a steal, as a work which is not ours, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, later I'm going to explain why it is not, I mean, ethical, or why it's not good to, I mean, to use plagiarism in our work. And also, before going to the why and how to prevent and how to avoid plagiarism, we should know the types of plagiarism. And they are, I mean, complete plagiarism, which means when we copy word for word someone else's work. Direct plagiarism, which is almost the same as complete plagiarism, but still we try to paraphrase and we try to make it ours. And also the source-based plagiarism, which is that we do not consider any kind of source of the work that we write and we do during our research work. And self-plagiarism, which means that we use it as our work. We consider that this is my work, and which in reality it's not ours. And accidental plagiarism is the one where we quite accidentally fall into plagiarism, especially we English teachers or foreign language teachers. Usually we fall into plagiarism quite accidentally because of using different kinds of terms and different kinds of abbreviations which are internationally used every day and in every hour work that we deal with. Why should we avoid plagiarism? So we should teach, especially the young researchers, and we should tell them that using plagiarism is an ethical issue, and we should respect the rules. We should respect the law. We should respect the authorization given by the tutor, given by the scholar, given by the person, or by the researcher himself. It is also a severe offense nowadays, even in my country, and I hope in all the countries. It has been passed a law on on plagiarism, which means that everyone is going to be punished while using plagiarism, especially when it is on purpose. Compromising integrity. So it compromises our work as researchers, as professors, as teachers, and so on. So we do not bear the same, and sometimes we may lose our work as well because of using plagiarism in any kind of article, in any kind of research work, and so on. We lose trust, of course, because using someone else's work, it's not ethical, it's not respectful, but also how can I trust the researcher? How can I trust this so-called alleged researcher? So that's why we lose trust to these kinds of researchers. It impacts professional and academic career. So we can go lower in our level of hierarchy in our profession as well. So it impacts credibility and authority at the same time. So students or young researchers are never ever going to have credentials on the work that they do, or if we just do not orient them how to avoid plagiarism in their work. So how to avoid now plagiarism? This is very important to show the student before starting the work. We should provide them some trainings in order for them to get to know what makes them fall into plagiarism. Perhaps most of the times, researchers, being senior or young researchers, they do not want to fall into plagiarism. But we should also tell them how to avoid plagiarism. First, we should read a lot, and not any kind of resource that comes by, but we should lead our researchers, young researchers, students, in order for them to read trusted resources. So we should provide them with the trusted websites for them to consider. to cite the resource that they use or we use in our articles or in our research work, in our thesis as well. We should teach them how to paraphrase and not to fall into plagiarism. Not only to paraphrase the sentences and the paragraphs grammatically, semantically, but also we should consider discourse language on the other side. So how to use this kind of discourse? Is it the proper language, academic language or not? And also we should provide our paraphrasing with a quote or with the trusted resources that we have used. Also, we have to present our own ideas as well. So that is the meaning of doing some research work. That is the meaning of exploring something in our work. When we come up with our own ideas, when we have our own views on the work that we are doing. And then after we come up to the final task, or so to the final writing, the phase of writing, we should use the plagiarism checker, which is, I mean, very easily to be found online. And also we could either buy it, or if the university can provide the scholars, the students with this plagiarism checker. Actually, in my university, we don't have a kind of a plagiarism checker provided by the university. Actually, 4 years ago, I used to be in the project manager of a EU project, European Union project for higher education, where where we scholars, professors should lead students, young researchers into research work and to avoid plagiarism. So we bought at the time, we bought the software for putting all the works of our students, especially thesis of the master program students, into the software and checking their work. But I don't know why it doesn't work anymore. So actually what we do, we professors, we either buy it on our own, or we use it just, we find some sites which are for free, and we use them for 1 month or for 2 weeks, and so on and so forth. Another important thing to be mentioned while writing an article, or a scientific article, or thesis, for example, which is a really scientific one, we should lead our students to use their own style of writing and not to use the style of other professors or other scholars' writings as well. So their own style may make them authentic, makes them be very, very real, makes them be confident, be trusted, and also just makes them, or their work, to be used by other scholars and other colleagues later on in their own work as a trusted resource later on. So here are some of these online tools to avoid plagiarism, which I do use them. And so they are very, very beneficial. I would recommend them because they are trusted, and also the most frequent one that I just even tell my students to put their work into plagiarism checker is this Turnitin, where students can do their own work first. They can identify where the plagiarism is. They can correct it, review it again and again and again until, it is not considered anymore plagiarism. In our system, educational system, we are not allowed to have more than 7% repeated acronyms, for example, which might be very influential in our students' work. So that's why we try to convince our students to check their work first, and then we just do our work as mentors or as professors that we lead our students into research work. Then I've given here some of the references where I've used, which I've used in my work, and also what we do in our university is that we encourage our students, master program students and PhD students at the same time, to have conferences and to have different kinds of round table discussions, and also conferences for them to discuss and to swap ideas and views on how to avoid plagiarism in their work. Before, it used to be a very frequent occasion in our educational system, but now the people are becoming, researchers are becoming more aware how to avoid plagiarism in their work. So this makes them more conscious that it's more important to use resources, trusted resources, beneficial for their work, and not to have overlapping information in their research work. Okay, so then if you do have any other questions, you are free to ask me, and I would love to provide you with the right answer, sharing my experience as a scholar, but also as a researcher and as a presenter in so many conferences here in Albania and outside Albania as well. Thank you so much for your time and for your collaboration. And also, I would like again to thank the university there, the universities and the scholars there in India for collaborating with other scholars everywhere in the world, because we are serving the same problems together, and sharing problems together is caring for every one of us, and also making every one of us be more aware and conscious of what we are doing in our educational system to make the world be the same everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Delija. Amazing. Your sharing is really excellent, brilliant, and impactful. And the topic you are sharing is really very important in research world. Yeah. So especially related to copyright issues. Now,
yeah.
I would like to
Thank you so
invite
much.
our, yes, welcome. Now I would like to invite our audience to ask Christian. Professor Delija, questions you may ask now. Professor Dr.
Yeah.
Supresa Delija, I told you, your sharing today is really impactful, very clear, you know. So we got every point you spoke and you narrated it very well. It's step by step. It is so clear. I doubt there's any more questions from our audience. That's why they are so quiet. Well done, Professor Dr. Supresa Delija. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to have you again and again in our session. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much. But I would like to say a few words about your sharing, what you shared. Yeah. So definitely plagiarism should be avoided because it's related to copyright issue and does not
Yeah.
reflect the originality of your research. So
Yeah.
you have shared what is plagiarism, types of plagiarism like complete plagiarism, direct plagiarism, self-plagiarism, source-based plagiarism, and accidental plagiarism. You explained in detail clearly. Next, you have shared also about how to avoid plagiarism, ethical issue, compromising into why you should avoid ethical, because it's related to ethical issues, compromising integrity, severe offense, lose respect, lose trust, impact professional and academic career, as well as impacts credibility and authority. So, Dr. Professor, you have done a marvelous sharing today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and hope to collaborate with the university as well another time.
Yeah, welcome, welcome. Dear,
Thank you.
yeah, dear honorable audience speakers, doctor, professors. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Angelina from, Dr. 1 minute, yeah? Yes. Is she around, Dr.?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there.
You are here? Oh, Angelina, 1 minute, yeah?
Sure, ma'am.
Yes. Dr. Angelina Bashu, welcome. Ma'am, welcome. Good to see you here. It's our great pleasure to have you with us. Just like Professor Dr. Supresa Delija, she has done a wonderful presentation. Now we are looking forward your wonderful presentation too. Let me introduce you to the audience. Dr. Angelina Basu is currently an assistant professor at School of Liberal Arts and Humanity at Voksan University, India. She also functions as co-chairperson of the Center of Excellence Literature Studies and holds the David Scott Keston Chair Professorship of English Language. She had pursued PhD and Master in Phil at University of Hyderabad, where she worked on exploring the interaction between trauma and translations. Prior, she had pursued an A in English at the Department of English, UOH. Recipient of IAFOR Scholarship, UK 2017, for her research article on Indian graphic narrative, and grants from DOTS, DOTTSS, Tempura University, and NIDA School of Translation Studies, Italy, for her pioneering research on trauma. Dr. Angelina currently teaches critical thinking, reading and writing, and analytical appreciation of language at Voksan University. Welcome, Dear Dr. Angelina Bashu,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It's my honor to be with you all, amidst you all. First of all, I would want to congratulate the International Research Academy of Science and Arts, Cape Comorin Trust, and Lavender Literary Club for organizing this 5-day international workshop on research skills. These I've been attending thanks to Dr. Sailija, Professor Sailija, ma'am. I've been attending your workshops and it's been very impactful. I also want to thank Dr. Professor Shailija Vasudeva for giving me the opportunity to interact with you all. So, with your permission, can I start sharing the screen, ma'am?
thank you. Please proceed,
Yes, ma'am.
Doctor.
Ma'am, is my screen visible? Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is
Yes,
visible.
It's visible, but you
Okay.
can maximize it so you can see.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Slideshow.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Is it right now, ma'am?
Yeah, amazing.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about from literature review to writing research article, deliberations on the process. So this is going to be a bit lengthy because we're going to start with literature review and we're going to end with writing the article, basically submitting the manuscript. So I request the participants to participate. If you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and ask, and let's make it interactive so we can learn. Our learning can be maximized. Okay. So let's consider the present research scenario. So we are constantly, as academics, we're constantly under the pressure to publish, because we know if we do not publish, not only in terms of quality, but also in terms of quality, chances are we will be perishing, in academia. There's no space for us. So even though we have been trying to, counter this culture of this almost mechanical pressure to publish, we have not been successful. And if you see the present scenario, it's pretty much dark. That is why, you have articles such as, why won't academia let go of publish or perish? We are in this, sadly, it is true that we are, girdled by this culture. So initially we were told that 2 good articles a year or 3 good articles a year, it's done. But now it's more about quantity as well. How many articles? There are people who are publishing 12 articles, 13 articles. How many are you doing? So you're constantly under this anxiety. And this is why even, UGC has taken this step that, PhD students were forced to, it was kind of mandatory to publish 2 articles minimum. But now, last November, the Indian government, the Educational Department of UGC, Higher Education, they said that no, this is not necessary. We'll be focusing on the research first and then on publication. No matter what, we are still girdled by the pressure. You know it better than anyone else as academics or early career researchers that you're constantly asked to publish. So it's important that we learn to deal with the pressure and learn to do it in a systematic way, learn to write our papers in a systematic way so that we can maintain our quality and also quantity of publication. So I guess most of our participants here are early career researchers, and you probably have just joined your PhD. And I understand the process is very scary and daunting because you're a beginner and you're starting to do something new, and it seems overwhelming, completely overwhelming at times. Now, the idea is you have to break it into pieces and work it brick by brick. So basically, when you think about writing a research paper, so you start with an idea of writing a research paper, identifying the problem, and you end with writing the paper. This is a long journey, and it's almost like building a wall. Okay, so you build brick by brick. That is what you have to do. So it's important that you break it into pieces and start. And through this talk, I will try to help you break this process into parts and then come up with your article so that you don't be overwhelmed with writing the paper. So just to give you a broad outline of how the paper, how the talk is designed for today, we'll be starting with literature review, and we will move on to evaluating our research, followed by selecting article type, what kind of article we intend to write, determining the authors, who are going to be the authors of a paper. I'll be discussing this in length. Selecting a journal, another very important component. Points to consider while selecting a journal. And then we move on to the stage of creating the first draft of your paper, which is also creating an outline of your paper, and writing the first draft of your paper, and then revising the paper, and then submitting the manuscript. Okay. So now the first things first. Before writing the article, what do you do? If you want to interact, you can you can just open your microphone and talk. So that will be very interactive. It will be like a classroom session. So what do we do before even we write the article? We start with our literature review, right? So you have, most of you are familiar with literature review, but for those who are not, basically you search for relevant literature that you want to work on, and you evaluate the sources. So think about, and let me give this example from literature domain, because I am from that domain. Suppose you want to work on, say, gender and literature in, say, let's pick a state, say, let's Himachal Pradesh. So you're evaluating the sources. So not only are you reading the text, the stories, the poems and all that, you're also evaluating the research work on these literatures. And once you have evaluated the research work, you see that, okay, feminist under gender and literature in Himachal Pradesh, feminist literature has been talked about, transgender literature has been talked about, but not so much masculinity studies. And then there you have identified your themes and gaps, okay? And with this identification, you decide that, okay, because masculinity studies has now been worked on, I'll be working on this area. And because I am more comfortable with working with short stories, I'll be working on short stories. So you have narrowed down, basically from a broad area through your literature readings, you've narrowed down. And after narrowing down, you will be outlining the structure of your literature review, and then you will be writing the literature review of everything. It's a basically review of everything that you have read, those that are going to help you in writing the paper, also a note of those literatures that are not going to help you in writing this letter, so that you have a written record of your literature review. Okay. So questions to consider while engaging in literature review. Once you're engaging in literature review, what are the questions that helps you, create a thorough, indulge in a thorough literature review? So first you have to consider what were the aims and objectives mentioned in the body of literature. So what were the literature that you're reading? What were their aims and objectives? Also, what are your intentions? That also you have to consider. What approaches, school of thought, theories, methods, strategies were used? So you're reading these different research articles and books, and you have to see what are the approaches used by different writers, different researchers. What are the schools of thoughts that they are bringing in? What are the theories they're referring? What are the methods they are, adopting? You have to do a thorough research and keep a written record. It's very important that you, alongside your readings, you keep a, either you go old school and use a pen and paper, or you also keep a digital record. Many of you are already doing that. Third point is, in what context were the research publications conducted? This is also very important. When you're reading your research articles, it's very important to verify the sources. As Professor Delija had already mentioned, to verify your sources should be very authentic, preferably indexed journals, indexed research publications. So you have to select those journals and articles, and you have to see in what context were the research publication conducted. So how many, for instance, what was the context? Who were the authors that were being read? How many, if it's a case-based study, who were the participants? These are the things that you need to explore. You also need to see who are the publishing houses, or is the article that you're reading published in a journal, in a special issue of a journal. These things helps you understand the context of the research publications that you're referring, and it kinds of help you, if you're aware of that, if you're consciously aware of that, it helps you take the right decision, and it helps you detect any biases if there are any. So this is very important as well. What were the outcomes of the publication? So when you were reading the paper, one thing that you need to consider is what are the outcomes of the publication. So what are the research outcomes? What are the findings of the research? And how does it bolster your research? How does it counter your research? These are the points that you need to consider. What is each publication's contribution to the field? This is also very important. So there are articles while you're doing research, literature review, there are articles that will help you build your research. There are articles that counter your argument. You need to see that even though those articles that are countering your research, you need to still understand how they are contributing to the field. That is also something very important. What gaps, problems are evident? This is again very important. What are the gaps in the research that you're conducting? That is something that you need to find out. And note the other gaps as well. If you notice that, okay, mass content studies has not been done, but again, gender and disability, there is also a scope of exploring this angle. That also something you can refer to. So identify all these gaps. And finally, do publications relate to my own research? So this is again very important when you are writing your literature review or doing engaging in a literature review. You have to see how these publications relate to your own research. Does it counter your research? Does it back up your research, back up your arguments? These are the questions that you have to ask yourselves, and then you're ready to write the outline of the review, write the literature review. So going back to the slide, after literature review, we engage in evaluation of research data. So coming to this slide, think about that you've finished your literature review and you have a data, you have your findings, okay? You know where is the gap and you have almost figured it out, you know the findings. Now it's very important to evaluate. Is your research, ask this question to yourself, is your research holistic and ready for publication? And there are a series of questions. I'm going there. Before that, I would ask you to, get your research, literature review, and research evaluated by a professor or by a colleague that you can trust, or by a peer. Because what happens is, often when we are evaluated by our own research, we might be unconsciously blinded by our inherent biases, because we are as humans, we are prone to being biased, and you know the number of biases, there are n number of biases, and we can be prone to any of those biases. We will not be noticing it, because many a times we do it unconsciously, we're not even aware that we are being biased. So it's always good to take suggestions from a senior or from a professor who's going to help you. And what happens in this case is, if you are blinded by your by your biases, you get an input that helps you again kind of re-evaluate your research and come back with a better literature review. So these are the other questions that you need to ask. Have you done or found something new, unique, and interesting? This is important because we often think that there is an established theory, and if we just challenge the theory or agree with the theory, that's research. No, that's not research. We need to add something new, unique, and interesting. We must contribute to the academic domain where in which we are working. So what is your contribution? That is something that you have to take note of. Second point is that, is the work directly related to a current topic? This is something that I suggest you must ask. This is again debatable, because what happens is, a lot of professors would say, no, we do not need to work on a current topic. But personally, I always suggest you to work on a current topic, because it helps you get citations, your work, there are chances of your work becoming read widely. So for instance, in domains like literature, if you today work on post-colonial studies, you tend to, of course, the hype was there at in 90s, early 20s, the hype was there, but now it's more shifted to gender, it's shifted to disability studies. It's a very problematic as a pointer, I would say, because I'm not always happy with this idea that I put forward, but it's something that you can consider. You must at least be aware, even if you're working on a topic that is not very current. You must be aware of this pointer and try to probably relate it to current topics that will make your research more relevant and will also help your research contribute to the current scenario. Third pointer, have you checked the latest results or research in the field? This is again a very important point. So when you're doing your research review, literature review, sometimes what you do is we are constantly referring to works that have been written in 1952. Very good. You have referred to a work that has been written in 1952. All fine in your domain, okay, but what about also referring to a work to the topic that you're researching on, to a work that has been written in 2022? That is, so what happens is your work becomes very recent then. So your research, you get to know what kind of arguments is going on in that domain in the contemporary scenario. So it's always good to make your check the latest results of research in the field that you're working on. Have you provided, moving on to the next point, have you provided solutions to any difficult problem? This is also a very important pointer. Try to provide solutions. Don't always critique, don't always just give your findings. If whatever findings you give, just try to also add your solution. Your solution not always might be right, but your solution is showcasing that you want to also engage in solving the problem, not only finding the problem, okay? Finally, are your findings clear and comprehensive? This is very important because your findings need to be very clear and comprehensive so that when you write the paper and when you submit your paper, your article is selected for publication. If your findings are not very clear, if your findings are very obscure, chances are your article will be rejected, and you do not want that. You must know that in academia, the present statistics is around 92% of the articles in top tier journal, not even top tier journals, gets rejected, and I think 95% of the articles that we submit gets rejected in the top tier journals. This is why we have to be very, very particular when we are submitting our manuscript for publication. When the answers to all these relevant questions are yes, you can move to writing your article. So think about, I was asking you to evaluate your research, and I wanted to, relate it with a contemporary situation. Most of you have heard the debate around Adipurush, if you have not watched it. For international participants, Adipurush is a movie that was based on Ramayana. Ramayana is a mythology, it's an Indian mythology, and Ram is almost revered in India, very much revered in India. It's considered a Hindu god. So there was this movie that was created. They did the research. So I wanted to ask you, what happens when you fail to evaluate your research? So of course they have done their research because they have written this, they have scripted this movie, they directed this movie. So in terms of researching on the storyline, they have done it somewhat, let's say somewhat. But think about consumer research. Have they done even a bit of consumer research? They haven't. And that is why it receives so much criticism. Think about how it has been covered in the media. NDTV called it part Planet of the Apes, part King Kong. Think about Business Today, they call it, critics call Prabhas Tarar movie an epic disappointment. So this is what happens when you don't do consumer research. So this kind of research is very important. And just trying to tell you, just trying to reinstate the fact, just trying to draw your attention and reinstate the fact that research is very important. Evaluation of your research in every quarters is very important. Now, this is what I have already mentioned, but I'll go again. I like to quote Gracian, a friend and a colleague as well. It is not good enough to challenge dominant theories without offering alternative theoretical approaches. Do not speculate, provide evidence. So this is very important because, as I was telling, that we think that countering an argument is enough. We need to, even if we challenge a dominant theory or a dominant methodology, we need to offer alternative theoretical approaches. So this is something that is very important. Remember that research, quoting Armstrong, is creating new knowledge. So if you're not creating new knowledge, it's not technically a research. So remember that. And I've often I've often chaired sessions where people have presented papers, but they were simply literature review. Do not do that. Literature review is what is existent. What is your addition to the knowledge? Remember that. What are your thoughts? What are your observations and what are your findings? And how does it add to your domain of knowledge? Remember that, and when you write an article. So now we have come to the third part, which is we've finished on a literature review. We have evaluated our research with the help of a peer. And now we will decide what kind of article type we intend to write. So it depends on what kind of article that you were planning to write from the very beginning. So do you want to write an original research paper based on empirical research? So in that case, it would be an original research paper. Or suppose you have read a book which has just been published. Say in 2023, there has been a book in your domain which has just been published. You have read it and you want to review the book. Okay, so in that way, such writings are called review paper because these are basically reviews of books. Your commentaries, first of all, basically this the summary of the book, of the book, and your commentaries on the book. This is what a review paper consists of. Third kind of article type could be a letter, commentary, and reply. So say somebody has published an article and you want to comment on that article. That's a commentary article. Okay. Similarly, you can also write a letter. Often, suppose you agree vehemently with the article that has been published. You write a letter. These are different type of article types, and also interview paper. Suppose you have interviewed a very eminent personality or an academician, in your domain area. Suppose in my domain area, literature studies, I have interviewed a writer. Now I have the interview with me, and I think that if I publish it, it will be helpful for others because the personality is very eminent and his opinions matter. So in that case, I'll contact the editor and say that I want to write an interview paper. So this is something that you need to consider even if you're writing your article. So suppose because we are discussing academic article, we will be going with original research paper. And when we have selected our article type, we move on to the next step, which is determining authors. So what is this all about? This is about determining who are your collaborators or who are your co-authors. So if you write your article alone, well and fine, no problem at all. But if you intend to collaborate with other co-authors as well, then I suggest that you do it even before you have written the paper, because what happens is it solves a lot of problem in the very beginning. So you must finalize the order of the authors for the paper, in the sense that you must decide who's going to be the first author, who's going to be the second author, and who's going to be the third author, depending on the contribution of all these authors. Okay, so says you're the first author because you're going to contribute 50%, and your friend, say A, his name is A, he's going to contribute 30%, so he's the second author, and 20%. He's going to be the third author. Okay, so remember that this order should be based on the contribution made by each of these authors and not who's your best friend. This is very important because academic favoritism is very much predominant, and we should try to avoid it at all cost. See who is working, who's contributing more, and depending on that, who's willing to contribute more, and depending on that, this order should be finalized. Okay. And what happens is state clearly what should be the contribution of each of the authors. Now, this is also very important. So if you're working on one part of the section and you must also decide at the very beginning as to who's working on the other part, and henceforth, like who's going to work on the rest of the part. So this is very important that you do it in the very beginning, so that later there is no argument about this ordering, because ultimately you're working with your colleagues. It's good to decide it at the very beginning so that there are no problems later on. Now, selecting a journal, a very, very important part, very tedious and very important at the same time. So you have done your literature review, you have evaluated your research, you have selected your article type, you have selected your co-authors, and this is the time where you select a journal along with your co-authors. If you're doing it alone, you do it alone. So a lot of academicians often say that no, we should be selecting our journals after we have finished writing the article. Well and fine, no problem. If you're willing to go through that tedious task, it's all right. But I would suggest, out of experience, because I have articles, because when I did not select the journal in my mind and write the paper, I have articles that are still with me, and I still don't know which journal is the right place to send it, because I have sent it in one or two places and they come back with the feedback that this journal, this is not the kind of work that we publish. This is not our area or domain. So it's very important you do this at the very beginning. You select the journal, at least 2-3 journals, you target them, and you wrote down to them, okay, these are the 3 possible journals in which I can publish my big paper. If you can narrow down to 1, it's very good. You will have more clarity, but minimum at least narrow down to 2 to 3 journals. Okay. It's a tedious process, yes, because it's tedious because first of all, your article length might not match. So you have chosen a particular journal, and the journal publishes articles of 8,000 words, but your journal is of 6,000 words. So even though the aims of both your article and the journal did match, the word limit is not matching. So this is something, again, you're stuck. Again, you're scanning for journals because you don't want to cut out you don't want to write more, at least in this case. Say, for example, then you're searching for journals again. It's a very tedious process, and especially when you're a beginner, it can seem a bit overwhelming. But understand that as you get along, as you practice more, you'll get through it. But it's very important that you wrote down to minimum 1 or 2 journals, so that you know exactly where you will be publishing your article. Now, what I always suggest is prefer indexed and open access journal. Why so? Because I understand, especially in India, you're always under the pressure to publish. At least in the last few years, you were under the pressure to publish, or because otherwise you will not be able to submit your PhD thesis. But remember that if you do not publish in very good index journals, your work will never get citation. Henceforth, therefore, your work is not going to be read. So what is the point if your work is not being read? So always prefer index journals, preferably the top tier journals, ABDC journals, Scopus Index journals. In India, also UGC CARE listed journals, and open access journals. Open access means your article is available for free for all. So what happens is readers across the world can easily access your article, thereby making your article more visible, and it helps you get citation. So remember these pointers when you are selecting your journal. And manuscript must be peer-reviewed, preferably double-blind peer review for publication. It's also very important when you're selecting your journal. Make sure it is being peer-reviewed. So if you're selecting any of the top-tier journals, they are blind peer-reviewed, so no worries. But say, worst case, you're going with, you're under pressure and you have to publish something. Please make sure that it's blind, double-blind peer-reviewed or peer-reviewed. Okay. Now, once you have selected your journal, these are also points that you can consider. Language of the journal, you would check. So for instance, you are working on French literature. You can publish in an English journal, well and fine, but if you can publish in a journal that is also incorporates French work, then your article becomes more visible to the right audience. So remember the language of the journal, focus area of the journal. Again, what kind of work you're working, like the aim of your article, does it align with the aim of the journal in which you're publishing? That's another point to consider. Indexing of the journal, as I have already mentioned. Availability of the journal. This is important, and I want to spend some time on this. You must have published, and often you will see that certain journals, like very famous journals as well, for instance, Sahitya Akademi journals, are only available in hard copy. So even when you publish in these journals, you never get cited, because how many people are really getting and buying those hard copies? Nobody. I mean, hardly a few. So think about you publishing an article and it is published in a hard copy. It's not available anywhere in the internet. Who will cite it? Reasonably, I think hardly few people will ever get to see it. So make sure that your journal is available online. This is something that I say, even if it's not open access, it's at least visible online, so that someone can contact you and reach out to you to access the paper. This is something that you must keep in mind. See that it's available online as well, even if it's available in hard copy. Then reputation of the journal is very important. So you don't want to publish in a journal which is known for being biased, which is known for favoritism. Consider a journal like Rupkatha journal in India. It was Scopus indexed a few years back, but then it was dropped from the list. Why? Because it made a reputation for itself, by resorting to unfair means for promoting favoritism. So you were a particular professor's student, and your professor is a panel member of the journal, your article gets selected. So quality was being compromised, and then Scopus indexed actually dropped the journal off. So you do not want to publish in such a journal, even though it's in UGC list. You do not want to publish in such a journal, because the reputation of the journal is tainted, very much tainted. Now, format recommendation of the journal is something that you should consider. What kind of format do they want, the MLA format or the APA format? Even figures are something that you want to consider and finally, you want to consider the charges applicable. So this is something that, again, I want to dwell on because think about a journal that meets your domain, your kind of study, and you think it's perfect. This happened with me once, and I thought it's perfect, everything. I sent my article. Later on, I saw that if your article is selected, and it's a Scopus index journal, by the way, and if your article is selected, and if it needs to be published, you have to pay an amount of 5,000 USD, which roughly amounted to 1 lakh something. So this is so remember, when you're checking this, make sure that you do not go for journals that are not charging you, and even if they're charging you, then it should be a very basic amount. Okay. Now, steps after selecting the journal. Now that you have selected your journal, you read the specific journal instructions for authors. You read a few articles from the journal so as to get an idea of the kind of article you need to write. What this happens is, suppose you have read the instructions and you go on to read a few articles that have been published in the journal, you get to see what kind of articles are being published in that particular journal, and you are again further being further knowing how to write your article, not only how to format but also how to write your article, so that there are chances for your article to be selected. Okay, so format your article as per instructions. I want to show an example here. So this is a screenshot that I had taken from the Taylor and Francis website. This is a journal of graphic novels and comics, and I wanted to just show you how do you to read these instructions. For instance, how do you choose your journal? So you read this about the journal. In the top section, you can see publish with us, submit an article, and beside that you can see about the journal. So you must visit that part and read about the journals. And further going down, you can see go to submission side. Below you can see instruction for authors. It is always suggested that you read the instruction for authors because It helps you exactly understand what the journal wants from you in terms of writing the paper, how they want you to format the paper, and every other nitty-gritty. So it's important that you do this. And yeah, so moving, now that you have also seen, you have read about the journal, you have read the instruction for authors, you've read the editorial policies. Now we can move on to writing the first draft of a paper. Remember, the first draft is not the final draft. It's never the final draft. So do not fret, but just sit down and plan to put it on a paper. Do not aim for perfection. Just aim that, okay, the paper must be written, and stick to it. Okay, so basically an outline of a paper, the title, the abstract keywords with the introduction, then the body is introduction, aims, methods, results, findings, discussions on findings, scope and conclusion, and acknowledgement, ethical statements and references. I'll go to each of these categories in detail. Just a moment. Yeah. So title selection. So remember that the title of your work is very important, because when we are reading an article, the first thing we read is the title, and then we move on to the abstract. Unless, even if you submit the abstract for conferences, you give the title. So it's the first impression you make on the reader. Your article technically should give, even before the reader or the reviewer reads your abstract, your title should be able to be telling your reviewer what your article is about. It makes the first impression, so be very sure to have a very precise, concise, and very it should be perfect, encapsulating the work, your article. So it informs, it's a one-liner that informs what your paper is about. And this is your chance to attract the attention of the editor readers. So sometimes you will find quotes, sometimes you can have a two-part, which is a title and a subtitle. Make it crisp, make it concise, make it informative. It should inform the reader about your article, and it should be concise. I have often seen a title extending up to three lines, and I've always suggested my students not to do that, because a title is meant to be brief. It's not meant to be long. It's not to be concise. And another very important point is avoid jargons. Now, what are jargons? Jargons are subject specific terminologies or complex concepts or words, and it is always suggested that you avoid jargon, such difficult words in your title, because you might be familiar with the topic and the topic is known to you, but your reader, even if that area falls under his or her domain, might not be aware of that jargon. So keep jargons for the body of the article, but not the title. Okay. And also abbreviations. Again, make sure that your title does not contain any abbreviations. For instance, I've seen people using PTSD, study of PTSD. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. But what happens when you use such abbreviations? You might be familiar with the concept, but say a reader who's just started reading on trauma will not be familiar with the concept of PTSD. So it's best to you avoid using abbreviations. Rather use the first name, post-traumatic stress disorder, in that regard. Okay. Your title can have two parts. This is also very important, in the sense that often you have just a title, and if it's self-explanatory, it's all fine. But there are times when you will feel that you need to add another part to your title to make it more understandable. And in that case, what you do is you add a subtitle. For instance, I just gave you an example here: representation of history in the Indian graphic novel. It is the title, and the subtitle is an analytical study of history through the frame of graphic narrative. So once the reviewer or the reader reads this, he understands that this is going to be a study, an analytical study, not a kind of review work. It's an analytical study of history through the frames of graphic literature. So he understands that history, Indian graphic novel, and analytical study are the domains that are going to be explored in this area. So in this particular article, so it's important that your title is very precise. I hope you've got this point. Moving on to the next part, keywords. Keywords are an essential part of producing a journal article. I think you're already familiar with this. When you send your article for call for papers, you are often asked to mention a few keywords. And I've often seen, at least my PhD students, a few of them I've seen, think that, okay, this is not very important. They were under the presumption that, okay, keywords are just, I can mention a few. Maybe their first 3 words are correct, and then the last 2 words, they just write it that way. Let's use this word. And I have told them repeatedly not to do that, because keywords are kind of, again, window to your article. Keywords are basically words or concepts that keep appearing in your paper. It is going to keep appearing in your paper. And you want to mention those terms or those words as your keywords, okay? For instance, think about keywords. When writing a journal article, you must select keywords that you would like your article to rank for. What it basically means is that you want your article to reach to the proper reader. So suppose your, for example, this example here, someone is working on arteritis and macrophage, and say you have given this keywords, you're given the correct keywords, they're easily able to detect this, detect the, okay, this article aligns with what I want to work on. So your keywords are very important in reaching the right reader, and thereby it will be cited more. So make sure you choose your keywords very, very selectively. Revise your keywords. Maybe you begin with 5 sets of words, and after you've written your paper, you feel that, oh, the last 2 pointers needs to be altered with this too, with the 2 different other words. So make sure you keep revising it, and only choose those words which keep appearing and which are the key concepts in your paper. Keywords help potential, as I've already mentioned, keywords help potential readers to discover your article when conducting research using search engines. So this is why you need to be very precise, very, very selective while you're selecting your keywords. For instance, I personally have no knowledge about tumor necrosis factor, but when I see this article and I see the hello, oh, my voice is good. Hello. Okay. Yeah. So when I see these keywords in this particular article, inflammation, macrophage, arthritis, I know what this article is about, even though I'm not from this domain. So make sure you select your keywords properly. Moving on to the abstract. This is known to most of you. This is abstract is basically the summary of the research paper, and I'm sure even if you're an early career researcher, you have written an abstract, maybe because you wanted to participate in a conference. You know how important it is, because only if your abstract is considered, adding value, then only your paper gets selected, and then only you're allowed to present your paper, or even your article is selected for being published in a journal. So the purpose of your abstract is to express the key points of your research clear and consciously. So I have always defined abstract as the summary of the research paper, because you talk about everything that you're going to do and everything your paper is about in the abstract in, say, 300 words. So often you're given a word limit, like certain journals will tell you that you need to write an abstract of 250 to 300 words. But there are certain journals which will ask for 500 to 600 words, especially journals like TNF. Often they ask you to give 500 words abstract. So in that case, the work I think becomes easier, because in 300 words it's difficult to condense. But this is what can make it, this is the factor on which your selection depends on. So you know that how to write an abstract, what an abstract comprises of. It comprises of what your research is about, what methods have been used, what your main findings are. So when you read these 3 points, it almost reads like you're writing the entire paper, and it is truly so. That is why many people prefer to write abstract in the end, but it is always suggested to write abstract in the very beginning, and keep modifying it as you write the paper. You might shift, make a changes, few changes here and there, but it's good to have that structure in front of you, because it's like a map. It's like a map for you. When you're writing the paper, you know how to go ahead. So abstract is a very important part of your research. Even when you send your articles for journal publication, they will be reading the abstract first. Maybe first your title, then your then your abstract, and then your keyword. So abstract is very important, and only if your abstract is considered legible, considered understandable, considered valuable, then only your paper is read. That is also not no confirmation of publication, but then your paper is read. So your abstract should be on to be to the point. Now, introduction of your article. So you have written the title, you have written the abstract, you've written the keywords, you've outlined the keywords, and now it's time for you to make the first draft of your paper. And when you're writing the first draft, even that paper will have an introduction, right? So what does the introduction do? It introduces the reader to your paper. Again, kind of what the abstract was doing, but this is going to be a very broad outline of your study. In the introduction, through the introduction, you form your first impression, and you also situate and contextualize your arguments. So what are the things that you need to talk about in your research? Firstly, you're going to talk about what is the rationale behind your research. Okay, so why did you think that it was necessary to go ahead and do this research? Second thing that you're going to do is you're going to talk about the literature review, broad literature review. This is where your literature review comes in. So you will talk about that X talked about this, Y talked about this, Z talked about this. However, nobody has talked about this area of the study. So I want to, in this paper, I want to explore this area. So this is how you, contextualize and talk about the literature review in your introduction. And then in the introduction, you also state your position. Where do you stand in terms of, in the terms of the topic? What is your position? And give your reader a clear overview of your argument. So I personally prefer to even list as to what are the parts of the paper. Firstly, I'm going to explore this topic. Secondly, I'm going to explore this topic. And thirdly, I'm going to explore this, and I'm going to chart out the findings. So do it in the introduction. So reader gets a map again, a bigger map than your abstract, and can move smoothly throughout the process. And again, this is understandable, but again, stressing on it, be precise, be clear at all cost, even when you're doing your writing the introduction. Now we come to the main body. Any questions as of now, participants? Okay, if you're then we'll go at the end of the talk. So main body. So now we come to the main body, and
Doctor,
hello.
Sorry to interrupt. I think Professor Dr. Jadija raised up her
Yes.
hand.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to thank Adelina coming with this very, very detailed lecture. And the question that I do have for these scientific papers, how trusted these journals are, because there has been recently a big problem with our professors in my university, where they've published, articles, research articles in different kinds of journals, and they have paid a huge amount of money, and at the end, their journal used to be indexed and high factor impact or whatever, and when it came to recognize their work, they were dropped out. So would you recommend us some of the trusted journals who are very trusted, but they are cheap or they are for free?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Actually, this is a problem that even exists. Thank you for the question, first of all, ma'am. And this is a problem that we encounter in India as well. Paid, and then later such problems arising. I have personally felt that Taylor and Francis is a very good brand to publish with, publication house to publish with. In terms of their peer review process, I myself have been reviewer of their journals. I felt they are very particular, they are very meticulous, and they have this entire list. So once you submit your article, you can constantly track your article as well. So is it with the reviewer now? Is it with the editor now? Or at what step is your article, what is the progress of the article? They take a 3-month time. The time frame is a bit long, but otherwise I felt Taylor and Francis journals to be really, really, ethical in that matter. So that is one. And secondly, I felt Routledge journals as well. Again, TNF, Routledge, Sage journals are good as well, ma'am. Sage is Sage publication house. So these are personal preferences, but I'm sure there are others. I'm talking from literature domain, humanities domain altogether, but I'm sure there are others as well in different domains which can be reliable. I personally do not like to publish in the UGC CARE that we have, which has often in India, it's again an indexing specific to Indian government. But we have found cases that there was a lot of bias and favoritism being involved. So I always prefer Taylor and Francis because they go through this blind peer review process, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen again. If it is. Just a moment. Okay.
Yes, you may share the screen again, Doctor.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Just a moment. Yeah.
No worries. No worries. Take your time. Take your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, is it visible?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it's visible. You can, yeah, fantastic.
Okay.
Got
Thank you, ma'am. So, what method? So, when we are when we're writing the main body, one of the we start with the aims, and then we move on to the methods, and then data analysis, then findings. Sorry, there is a spelling error in this. I can see in the slide. Apologies for that. And then discussion on findings, and then scope for further research. So, first thing that you need to talk about in the main body is what is that you intend to explore in the paper. This should be somewhere between your main body and your introduction. What are the aims and objectives of your paper? This is something that you need to state, and it should be very clear so that your arguments are understandable to the reader and the reviewer, and it reads in a very coherent way. So state your aims in the first part. Then we move on to the methods. So what methods have you adhered to? Is it a qualitative research or is it a quantitative research? So after you have stated your aims and objectives, you state the methodology you have adhered to. Talk about the theorists that you're going to refer, you're going to refer in your paper. Talk about the methodology you're going to use. Is it going to be a qualitative research or is it going to be quantitative research? And following this part, you are going to analyze your data, and this is going to be your analytical section. This will involve you listing out your analysis and and after this, after you have done your data analysis, you're going to chart the findings of your research. Now, this is very important because your findings needs to be presented with a lot of clarity, as mentioned already before. It needs to be mentioned with clarity, listed out, and this is not enough. After you have stated the findings of your research, it's important that you discuss on the findings of the research. So your findings and what are your observations on your findings of the research, and how does it add to the domain you're working on, and how does it contribute? How does this contribute to the research, to the research as well as the domain as a whole? Now, once you have discussed, you have analyzed the data, listed out the findings and had discussed on the findings, you move on to the scope for further research, which is basically telling your reader the scopes which they can, the scope of further research, how they can carry this research forward. So this is very, again, important. You need to outline this because it tells the reader and the reviewer that your research is not it's not closed. It is very open. It can be taken forward by other researchers, and it's an ever expanding area. So it's very important that you mention the scope of further research in your area. Now, moving on to the conclusion. Should be an interpretation. Conclusion, as you know, is basically should be an interpretation of the results. So whatever findings you had, you discuss the findings and then you interpret the results in your conclusion. And this is the place. This is, again, often what happens is I've seen academics read the abstract, introduction, and then the conclusion, and then come to the body. And only if they find introduction and conclusion relevant, they read the paper. So that is not ideal, but that is how things often happen. So your conclusion also do not get too comfortable in the conclusion. Make sure you're doing it with as much dedication as you've done your introduction abstract as well. So it basically should be an interpretation of the results, and it should summarize the paper in brief. This is, again, a very important pointer. Just like introduction was, again, kind of telling you about introducing you the paper, this is where you tie all the loose ends up. So everything that you have discussed in the paper, tie it down, bring a closure, develop a closure, and summarize the paper in brief, and make sure that you do not introduce new concepts in this section. There are academics who often tend to, consciously introduce new concepts, trying to link it to the scope of research. Well, then do it in the body of the essay, the body of the article, but not in the conclusion. Conclusion should always be about wrapping it up, giving it a closure, giving your article a very, very coherent closure. So make sure that you do not introduce new concepts in this section. So with this, we come to the ending of the article, outline of charting of the article. Now, following which, we need to talk about acknowledgement. So it is a space. What is acknowledgement? So think about your co-authors. You've worked with them, but they are your co-authors, and they will find mention in the article as writers, co-authors, your co-authors. But think about those people who have helped you indirectly. For instance, say you needed 2 articles and you were not being able to access it because they were behind the payroll, or they were not accessed, you somehow were not being able to reach those articles. And there's a friend of you who is based in, say, UK, and and that book was available to him, and the book was accessible to him, and he or she shared the book with you, and it helped you immensely while you were doing your research. This has happened to me as well, so I am saying from that perspective. So you need to mention them. They should not be lost. They should just not be lost. They should be remembered, and you should mention them in your acknowledgement section that is just below your conclusion. So you need to say that, okay, I'm grateful to this and this person for helping me, for providing me with these articles, and just a one line, nothing. So another way a person can help you is financially. Say you were not being able to, you wanted to do a case study and you were not being able to fund yourself. You had to visit places, and there is this person who financed your study, or there is this organization who financed your study. So in that case, please mention them, please acknowledge them, because in academia, we need to develop integrity and trust, and entire landscape of academia should be built on integrity and trust. And this helps develop integrity. It helps develop relationships, because when you acknowledge someone, it makes the other person understand that you valued his help. So do that when you get help as such. References and citations. Now, very, very important, because you might be writing, you may have written a very, very significant article. You have made a contribution, significant contribution. But think about the fact that think about if you have not referred and cited properly, what will happen? What will happen is your article, as Professor Delija already mentioned, will be considered as you being plagiarized. So you will be considered as having plagiarized from someone's works. So this is very important that you cite your references very, very properly, with a lot of dedication. Do this work. It's a bit boring, but it's very easily done these days. There are softwares. It's Google Scholar. You can go and just use the software and get the citations. So remember that reference and citation should be well balanced, current and relevant. Remember that, as I was mentioning, that if you refer to old works like written in 1950 or even 1990, make sure also what work is being done now. So refer to an article which has been written in July 2023. So that makes your research very current and relevant. Okay. Now you should aim to cite references that are not more than 10 years old if possible. So this is again, as I was mentioning, to cite recent works so that your research is very updated. It tells the reviewer that you have not only explored old works, maybe they are redundant now, but you have also referred to the current trends that are going in your area. The studies you cite should be strongly related to your research question. This is again very, very important. Often when we are reviewing articles, we come across a lot of papers which use a lot of references, but when you read those references and when you go and read them, you realize that the student has not done a proper study of those articles or books. So remember that the books or the articles that you cite should be very relevant to your research question. So it'd be very related to your research. Don't just cite for the sake of citation. Cite because it contributes to your work. So keep these pointers in mind when you're referring and citing. Now, plagiarism is something which Professor Delija has expanded and elaborated in detail, and I would not be able to do justice to it. She's already done a fantastic job. So I'll just again reiterating the same thing. Any published and unpublished material, whether in manuscript, printed or electronic form, is covered under this definition. So anything that you're referring to that is not your own original idea, please cite. Please refer them. You list them in your references. Otherwise, it will be considered as plagiarized. Now, coming to formatting the paper in terms of figures and images, this is something that you will have to do if you're using figures and images in your article. Your journal will have some instructions as to how you need to format your figures and images, and please meticulously follow that. Your article could be perfect, as I mentioned, but if you do not follow these instructions, chances are your article could be rejected again. So figures and images should be correctly formatted, number one. Number two is, if using images from external sources, take permission. For instance, when you're working on, say, a topic that involves using images from, say, a particular book, please write to the author or the publisher and take permission from that publication house that, can I please use images from this, text, from your text. And only when they have given their permission, only then can you use those images. Otherwise, you're not allowed to even use those images. Remember that. Otherwise, it will be illegal. So take the permission. Generally, most people are very liberal. You will get the permission. Otherwise, there are times you would be asked to pay some amount, maybe $50. They charge. They have their charges written down, noted down. And it's always safer to obtain a written proof of submission. So make sure you have a written proof of this, of this permission that you have taken, because chances are your reviewer, suppose you've submitted in a journal, your reviewer will ask you, can I please have a proof? So it's important that you do that. And figures and images should be properly numbered and labeled. Remember that you should label it very correctly, because when you will be writing your article, it should be readable to your reader. And when you've numbered them properly, it becomes easily readable. So do that as well. Now, writing the first draft, all this while we were talking about writing the first draft of your paper, writing the outline of your paper. Now, there is always a debate. Do we do it chronologically or do we do it chaotically? Now, if you ask me, I would say it's up to you. It's totally up to you. If you think that you want to outline the findings and then outline the abstract and findings and then write the entire paper, it's up to you. I personally like to write it chronologically, like abstract, introduction, body, conclusion. But again, make sure you do it as per your convenience, as per the way you feel comfortable. But if there are writers who are collaborating with you, make sure everyone will write in different style. Someone will have a different style of writing, and it's very easily understandable, and it makes the reader finds the article very incoherent. So you need to revise the article very meticulously in such cases. So if you are collaborating, make sure the article reads as a whole and not as 3 parts or 2 parts. Okay, make sure that happens. So now you have written the first draft, and now you can revise them. You need to revise the manuscript. So this steps involves 3 major tasks, each to be carried out in the order given. So make major alterations. That is, now that you have written your first draft, you have revised it. You think that, okay, these 2 paragraphs are not very coherent. They do not read as though they do not interconnect with each other. It doesn't read like a flow. So you make those corrections. If you see that there are certain gaps that remain, please make those alterations and corrections. In terms of grammar, I did not need to say you have to be grammatically correct, because then only your article is readable, then only your article is selected for publication. So polish the style of your writing. Then format the document, and finally we come to formatting the document, because you need to form a format as per the rules and regulations of the journal. So they might ask you to go format according to modern MLA format or format with APA. You must check it properly and format it as per the journal's instructions. This is why I asked you to read the instruction to the authors. Go to the journal website, and read the instruction for authors. Now, submitting the manuscript to the editor. So after you have revised your article, maybe it might take 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, more than that. This is the time you submit your article. And again, as I mentioned, follow the instructions given to the authors, and what item you need to submit, how to submit, and whom you should submit. Please see these very carefully, and then only submit your article. List it down. Keep a checklist so that you don't miss anything. That helps. Remember that a few journals also ask you to submit a preview, that is a kind of a cover letter, saying that why you had done this research, why do you intend to publish this research in that particular journal, and what you think as to how this article will contribute to the domain of research. So this is a cover letter. Often you will see certain journals ask for it. Often there are journals that do not ask for it, but if they ask for it, make sure that you've written it well. And it should be about 300 words, not more than that. And you should send it to the editor. At this point, you may wish to list possible reviewers. Again, this is an option that is not available for good nowadays in most of the well-reputed journals. There was earlier an option that you could list your possible reviewers or also avoid certain reviewers. But nowadays, this is not an issue, so it's okay. If necessary, contact the editor to be sure that a manuscript was received. This happens when you have not received any mail. So say you have submitted your article and 1 month has passed by and you have not received any mail, or in the tracking system you can't see any update. So then reach out to the editor and ask what is the status of your article. Okay. And if after a month, generally they might ask for a month, but it could be 3 months as well, sometimes 4 months as well. If you have not received a response after this period, whatever period they give you, if it could be 1 month or 3 months, remember not to pester the editors always, because you do not want to annoy them. So only after the period is over, only after 1 month or 3 months, given the given time frame, you nudge them. If you have not received a mail, then you nudge them, and you can send a mail saying that, oh, Jessica, could you please update me about the status of my paper? So with this, we come to the end, towards the end of the session. Just a quick tips. One thing that I always tell my students: clarity. Make sure your language is very clear. Make sure writing for a global audience. So when you're revising your article, when you're grammatically changing your article, writing your article, make sure you're reaching out to a wider readership. And write your journal article with citation to give your readers certainty in your research. As I've already mentioned, citation is again very important. So with this, I conclude my session today. If you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer. Hello?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Angelina. What could I ever say? The manner you presented, wow, I admire your energy. Truly captivating.
Thank you, ma'am.
Detailed presentation, insightful. Detailed, descriptive presentation, insightful and impressive. I don't see any reason why anyone who followed you from the beginning will not be able to do a good research paper. You have shared with us about 22 subtopics under writing research paper. Wow. If I have to narrate it, let you know which are the topics. I think it's really so wonderful. I think I'll just list out so that our fellow audience will know what you have shared, the topics here, so they can watch on the YouTube. Dr. Angelina, you first started with what to do before writing your research paper, evaluate your research paper, then writing your research paper, and then article types, original research, review paper, letter, commentary, and or reply or interview paper. Then determine the authors, selecting a journal, and you say 2 or 3 is recommended. Points to consider, 8 points to consider while selecting a journal. Then steps after selecting the journal. Then go to title selection. Create an outline of your paper, your research paper, keywords, abstract, introduction of your articles, writing, main body of your research paper, conclusion, acknowledgement, references and citations, references and plagiarism, revise the draft, the manuscript, submitting the manuscript, writing draft, figures and images, and finally quick tips. Yeah, so we are overwhelmed with your presentation because it's not ordinary. A lot of hard work you have put in into this presentation. Thank you for sharing with us. We love to have you again and again. Dear audience, dear fellow speakers, professor, doctors, delegates, we had 2 wonderful, excellent, brilliant presenters, researchers today. So I hope you have enjoyed and you have learned a lot from this sharing from our wonderful professors and doctor. Thank you so much. I'm pass on to you, Dr. Sailaja. Back to you.
A very good evening to all of you. And it's a both sessions are very informative. And I want to thank Dr. Shiprisha ma'am and Dr. Angelina ma'am. Both lectures are wonderful and very informative. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much, dear our chairperson, Astria ma'am. Thank you so much. You are doing a wonderful job, and we are very happy to have you as a chairperson in our workshop, and it's really a very wonderful experience. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.